I'm excited to preach this message this morning. We're in the middle of, first let me share something about Friendsgiving. Because of the weather this week, dress in layers. We're going to bring all the tables inside. We're going to move our furniture so that there's room. It'll still be tight, but dress in layers so that the kids can run around in the backyard. We have a fence and then a nice side yard for like football or whatever. But I wrote that down. I was like, I got to tell you, it looks like it's going to be cold, but we will be eating inside. Okay, now let's jump into the message. So we're in a series titled Neighborhoods to Nations, and every fall we do what's called a legacy series. And really what we do is we bring strategy to the church to kind of unpack the vision that was shared on Vision Sunday. So for us, Vision Sunday is always on our anniversary. That's in September. And so that Sunday, Trev preached a word on the vision for 2025 is to grow. Now, for every one of us, that is something different. And over the legacy season, we are preaching and talking about our 5 legacy lanes. So we can all talk about vision, but unless we make a plan, it is just ethereal, right? And so we wanted to make it really practical. So we have at Heart Church what's called vision lanes, and these are the vehicles to accomplishing vision. And so when somebody joins Heart Church and they're like, how do I be a part of what God is doing in and through the church? Pick a vision lane or more than one, but that's kind of how we would look at it. So we have 5 vision lanes: church planting, local outreach, international missions, next gen, and heart for the house. Heart for the house would be general. Say we have a building and we need to, upgrade a sound system because technology's changed, or, whatever. Build a new wing because the children's ministry is exploding or whatever. So those are the 5 lanes, and we have been preaching through each of those. But really, the heart of this whole message series is to stir Heart Church to think more evangelistically, but also to think, how can I reach people locally and globally for Christ? How can I be a part of what God is doing on the earth? And so last Sunday, Trev talked about next gen and heart for the house and how that combats individualism. I'm going to talk this morning about church planting and local outreach. And I want to start with something that's familiar, and then we'll get to the local church and the local outreach and the church planting stuff. So let's start with calling. When we all ask Jesus into our heart, we are called and invited to be a part of the kingdom of God. You are called to be a man of God. You are called to be a woman of God. And what that looks like is we develop gifts, the spiritual gifts we develop in the fruit of the Spirit, and we are responding and a part of just walking in sanctification, right? Letting the Lord, our spirit is saved, Christ is in us, but our soul, our thoughts, our will, and our emotion, all that still needs surrender, right? So that's this path of sanctification. Now, as we say, Lord, I want to live for you, we begin to receive assignments. For me, a common assignment that for some people have in the room is, I'm a wife. That's an assignment. To be a godly wife, or to be a godly mother, or to be a godly church planter, or to be a godly businesswoman, or to be a godly author, or to be a godly coach, or to be a godly engineer, to be a godly teacher. These are assignments that God has given us. And in order to get these assignments, we need to spend time with the Lord. And while we're waiting to get our God dream, we need to wait actively. So I'm not just going to sit on my couch. First of all, I'd get bored. You all know me. I'd be bored. I'd be like, I'd go nuts. But what does waiting actively look like? I have a couple examples. If you're waiting to get married, what you can work on are personal disciplines, character, and already existing personal relationships. If you're waiting to get a job, you can work on your resume or your schedule for setting interviews or what you're going to wear, work on communication, your interview skills. You can work on your budget so you know, is this job going to pay for my bills? Or you're going to have to get a second one later when you see the check isn't like high enough, right? When you're waiting to get into college, you need to work towards meeting requirements, studying, filling out forms, visiting campuses, finding a church, buy that college so you have a community to get a part of, right? Come on. When you're waiting to start a church, come on, somebody. You got to get a word from the Lord. And then you got to wait, and then you set a timeline, and you set a budget, and you build team, and you train team, and then you just start putting the pieces together. So let me show you, not all of you here are waiting to get married. Not all of you here are waiting to go to college. Some of you are done with that. Some of you are already, you're here at the like year 2 of church planting. So, and some of you are like, I do not want to plant a church. Okay, what steps can you take while you're waiting when God has given you a dream? This is not my main message, but it supports where I'm going. So I got to give this to you. These are going to be on slides, and there's a bunch of steps. I'm just going to breeze right through them. Okay, so if you are somewhere saying, God, I've got a dream, or God, what is your dream for me? Start walking through some of these steps. The first one, surrender your whole life. Tell God there's nothing off limits. He can rearrange your schedule. He can rearrange your circle of friends. He can rearrange your mindset, your habits. God, nothing. I want to live for you. I surrender all. You're worthy of it all, and nothing is off limits. Second thing, confess any known sin. Why? Because when you go into that next season, any sin that you already know that you're dealing with will like limit your effectiveness, and it'll just kind of slow you down, right? So if Trevin and I, before we were planting, there was somebody that was like, make sure you don't go into the church plant with unforgiveness. And we were like, okay. And somebody was just like, I am serious. It destroys churches when people go to plant a church. And so we would search our soul, and I would be like, Trev, am I doing it? Why do people keep saying it? Like, and he was like, no, we're doing it. And I'm like, okay, am I not doing it right? You know, because I really wanted to get that wisdom right. We want to leave that stuff in the past. And then step number 3, we're going to kind of sit here later, but obey what you already know is God's will for your life. There you go. Just real simple, except that's some of the hardest part, right? Number 4, seek God through prayer and fasting as you're waiting for God to birth something in you and through you. Seek God through prayer and fasting, and ask somebody to pray and fast with you. This is what makes small groups so amazing. And this is where relationships are built, because what can happen is someone can say, hey, how did that go? Oh, well, this is how it went, and this is what God is speaking, and so this is where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to pray for you that this happens in the next 3 months, and what's your timeline for the next step? You have somebody cheering you on. And it's important to remember, even though your God dream is personal, it's not individual. Because Christianity is a movement in and through community. So remember last week, Trevin talked about individualism, right? The God dream that he has for you, yes, it's personal, but it's not individual. So then number 5, as you're doing your Bible reading and you're seeking God, there's 2 things you can do. 1, search to understand the principles related to what it is that you're waiting on the Lord for. And then the second one is be sensitive to his impressions and to the God ideas that you start to get, and start to write those down. Number 6, evaluate your skills, gifts, and resources honestly. And I'll show this to you in real life. Trevin and I were casting vision, right, in this whole legacy series. And we're talking about here's what we can do in 2025. On Sunday, December 8th, that's Legacy Sunday, and we're going to ask everybody, as you've been praying, listening to these messages, and deciding and praying like, God, what vision lane or lanes should I give towards? After that day, we're going to look and see how much money do we have in each lane to figure out how much can we accomplish next year. Does that make sense? So there's an honest assessment of our resources. And resources also includes mental health, emotional health, not just money and time. Does that make sense? That's really good. Okay, number 7, think logically and develop awareness. 1 Chronicles 12:32 talks about the sons of Issachar knowing the times and seasons. God is very powerful. but he's also very practical. And so he wants us, even though we are walking in the Spirit and aware of the Holy Spirit, we're very practical, right? Okay. Number 8, create a timeline and write out some steps and their perceived outcome. Well, you may need a mentor for this. Get one, find one, ask someone to help you. We have a business small group on Fridays. Just see Misty if you're thinking that anything in corporate, anything with launching or starting something. If you need a mentor, please go and see Misty. Then number 9, reach to accomplish those steps and make adjustments as you grow. And I want to talk about 2 adjustments that I personally do not like. Okay, I'm going to let you guys know the ones that are the hardest for me. And I think you'll be like, oh yeah, like this is for all of us. The first adjustment is when I get a vision from the Lord and then I'm on a journey like going to reach it. As I get closer and the Lord is building and the Lord is doing things, the Lord shapes and clarifies the vision. Yeah, it's true. But sometimes that doesn't match my original vision back here when I first started. And so allowing the Lord to continue to refine the vision is really important, and letting him make that adjustment as we grow. And then the other adjustment that I always have to work on making, and that I'm getting better at, but it is still one of my things, is making adjustments when it comes to my personal expectations. Like I'll be like, we can get this done in a year. And it's like, oh, maybe not. Or I might underestimate and we're done in 3 months. You know what I mean? Like I have these expectations on timelines, on capacity, on resources, how much we can stretch them. And then what happens is I have to make adjustments as I'm in real time. And allowing the Lord to grow me and to be flexible and to refine the vision as I go. Okay, number 10. Keep track of problems and tensions as prayer requests, and keep track of answered prayers and confirmations. Think about them in worship. Think about them in saying prayers of thanksgiving and in storytelling. One of the things that I love, I have a Freedom small group with women, and Gabriella, I'm pointing her out here. I love having her in my group because she'll be like, Pastor Stephanie, I got to tell you this. This is what happened. This is what God is showing me this week. And I'm like, yes. Like she's so good at just telling the story of what God is doing in her week. And that is something that encourages people. It like spurs people on to go, I want to hear God too. I want God to work in my life weekly too, not just go to church and have a feeling, right? So tell people what God is doing. And the more you look for those opportunities, the more aware you will be of the Holy Spirit in your life. And then you'll have more to share. And then the last thing, surrender your whole life again. Surrender your whole life again. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get to a certain spot. You've invested so much. And you're so proud of yourself. You also see all your strengths and your weaknesses. You may have battle scars. And you're looking at it and you're like, I'm going to win for Jesus. And I'm going to make this happen. And all of a sudden, we can make it ours if we don't surrender again. Sometimes you'll see me in worship. Usually my hands are raised. But if my hands are down here, I have this visual of God. I'm laying down everything. I'm laying down my family. I'm laying down my marriage. And I'm laying down the church, and I'm laying down the team. God, these are yours again. These are yours again. If ever during the week I picked them back up and they were mine, God, I surrender them again. So in step number 3, I said we go back to this. Obey what you already know is God's will for your life. One area that we're not good at surrendering is our efforts to reach the lost. And I want you to understand God's dream for you includes reaching the lost, includes seeing the sinner saved. And we actually have a biblical mandate to go into all the world. And for you, that may just be McKinney. It's your neighborhood. God has specifically put you in your apartment complex, specifically put you in your job, specifically put you in your neighborhood or your kid at that school to minister to that teacher. He has placed you there. And that is part of his plan, his assignment for you to reach the lost, to see them and reach the lost. I need your help for a visual aid. So, in all of our hopes and dreams, reaching the lost can, we're just obeying what we know is to do is right. That's where that goes. That's where serving in church, tithing, small groups, the things that we know to do are right, growing the fruit of the Spirit. So I'm going to have you stand here, and this is going to be your line, okay?
Okay, this is my line.
And because I'm shorter than you, I got to be here. Now let's think math for just a minute. Okay, help me explain it, Lord. So in math, we have grids. You have your XY grid, and then you have a dot that's the beginning of a line.
Right.
And let's pretend this is our line. And we're going to walk, Trevin's going to walk the straight and narrow path. God's plan for his life is that he would walk the straight and narrow. But, pause, this one thing that he knows is the thing to do, he's not going to do. He's not going to be concerned about the lost. So we're just going to set him 1 degree off this way. So walk the straight and narrow, but you'll see over time, keep going. Over time, you need to walk further away. Like you got to stay with the angle. Over time, what happens, that 1 degree off actually becomes way off. Yeah. And what happens is, what builds in us, instead of walking a path of sanctification, we're actually beginning to walk in our own self-righteousness.
Ooh, come on now.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And we wonder, how do we get so off track? How do we get so legalistic? And it's just 1 degree off of not caring. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you have to have your lives perfect or put together. Right, and this is not a message of condemnation. This is a message of being a well-rounded disciple and follower of Jesus. So here's what happens. Our job is to do what we know is the right thing and walk the straight and narrow, and you're going to go straight. But what we have to face and combat, go ahead and walk, is this darkness, this self-centeredness. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and put your hands together for him. Yes, we don't need marriage counseling. But what happens is self-centeredness is actually the demonic force that opposes walking that straight and narrow. Does that make sense? We are all, as much as we don't want to admit it, we are all in a narcissistic generation. I don't know if you guys are like me. When I started hearing this word, I was like, what is a narcissist? And I'm like, oh, I know some of them. And then I was like, wait, am I a narcissist? And then I go to this Instagram post, real educational. And the counselor, who's a phenomenal, well-known counselor, on the thing, it was like, if you're asking if you're a narcissist, you're not a narcissist. And I'm like, phew. But ever since then, I was like, I don't know. Narcissists kind of think too highly of themselves. Like, maybe there are some of us that we don't understand how self-centered we really are. Maybe not so toxic like a narcissist, but just self-centered enough we don't care about people who are hurting and who are broken. The kingdom of self will always oppose the kingdom of God in your life. So one way we combat self-centeredness at Heart Church is by planting churches and hosting local outreaches. Let's figure out, how do we solve this problem? So we have these vision lanes. They're not just to build the church, they're to build the church.
Right, come on now.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's talk about church plants. I'm going to give you some facts, and then I'm going to show you how practically you can get involved, you can grow in 2025, and then we'll do the same thing with local outreach. when it comes to church plants, 7,000 churches close a year. Only 4,000 churches are planted a year. So in order to make up for that, like if we start today, we start this year, in order to make up for that, we need to plant 8,000 to 12,000 churches. And then to keep up with the growing population, we need to add another 2,000 churches a year to start. When I was looking at the statistics with McKinney, and it's not too far off, same as Dallas, just looking at those two cities, there are so many people in this city, and there are so many churches in this city. If everybody in the city went to a church, and I mean a Southern Baptist, a Catholic, or an evangelical church, there would be 1,000, about 800 and something people in every church. There are so many churches here, but a lot of them are closing down.
Yeah, it's true.
We need, or they're just old and crusty, and we need the Spirit of God to breathe on his people once again, right? But why are church plants hard? Like, we set up pipe and drape. That's technically, Brad, is setting up pipe and drape hard? Like, really? It's not that hard. Are you sure, Mike? Like, once we get it at, like, what, it's a height thing? Yeah. We need all the tall men. Is it really hard, Amir? Is it really hard to, like, set up the signs outside? Once we have trained them. So then why don't we do it? Why won't more people?
Come on now. There's a question there.
Self-centeredness, right? Let's talk about some keys to church planting. What's essential for church planting is prayer. We need a word from the Lord. Training and coaching. Funding and family. No Lone Rangers. No Lone Ranger church planters. And those are all things that Heart Church will contribute differently throughout the different seasons. Obviously, we are a church plant, right? And so what we can give as new church planters, even though we've been in the ministry combined for over 40 years, what we can give is that our church is 2 years old. So somebody who's just church planting, we can go, we know what your first 2 years is going to look like, and it's fresh. We can encourage you and walk with you through this. Let's talk about our heart. How do we grow? If we want to take the vision and you want to make the lane, the vision lane, church planting, you want to take that on. There's 3 ways you can engage with this lane this next year. One is pray. Pray for your pastors. We're still in church planting mode. Pray for our future leadership team, that's staff, that's elders, that God would bring people who know that they're called to the ministry, to local church ministry, that they would be developed or already developed, and that we could jump in. Pray for our leadership and our volunteers that are here already serving. That they wouldn't grow weary in doing good, that they would keep their eye on the prize in due season. There's going to be a harvest, Galatians 6:9. Pray the Lord brings new converts. Pray for growth, 1 Corinthians 3:5-7. The second way you can participate is give. Now, with church planting, how do we give with the church planting lane? I would say start by tithing. If you're not tithing and you need help, you need to figure that out, let us know. Trev is awesome at helping building budgets. And he's sat down with people and said, here's your plan to get out of debt. Here's your plan to save for these trips and these bucket list items. Trev is awesome at that if you want help, and he will help you. And then the other one is on Sunday, Legacy Sunday, December 8th, give towards the vision lane of church planting. There are 2 church planters that Trevin is working with right now. He's coaching them. And we'd love to be able to go to their launch Sunday. The money would go to that. We'd also love to give them a $1,000 check. I can't tell you, when there's just so much to talk about right there. Like, it is such a blessing to write a $1,000 check for a church planter.
So true.
Changes their world.
Yeah.
And then the last way you can engage with this lane is go. Because we're a church plant, this is what this looks like in this season. If you're not serving once or twice a month, let's get you on a team. It'll help you build friends. It'll help you feel like you're part of the community. And you'll get to know more people because the different times you serve, you'll get to meet them. And your kids are going to find friends. That's how that all happens. And the other way you can go is grab touch cards, pens, and stickers off the welcome table. Every week, they're always available. If you want a bunch of pens for like clients or a swag bag or something like that, let us know. We'll bring some so that you can take those. Let us know what you want, what you need. We have those. Now let's switch and talk about local outreach. I want to give you a couple facts, and I just want you to think about this because this is our generation. 47% of America's unchurched will go to church if they're invited by a friend. Because it's all about relationship. It's all about relationship. And it's hard even for those who are a part of a church to stay connected or to get connected because there's a difference between attenders and members, right? The attenders are the people that they show up and they're fed on Sundays, but they're not contributing. And then you have members that are saying, this is my church. I want to see it thrive. I want to be a part of what God is doing. But what we're seeing in our generation, specifically with millennials and Gen Z, the middle class is shrinking, right? And so the more affluent a couple or an individual becomes, the less they attend church. And our young people, Gen Z, they have more traveling options, right? And so they can go and travel, and they can go visit places, and they get that Instagram reel that's like all, it looks awesome, and they go hiking by themselves, but whatever. But it's fun, and I'm not saying those things are wrong, but what happens is they start missing church, and then they're gone for like 2 months. But then when they come back, they have to rest, which is good. They have to reset, which is right. All of those things, but then they get sick. And then and so there's reasons why they miss church. And so anything extra like an outreach, they're not able to be a part of it because they're trying to keep things in order at home. Because we have more options for working remote or just we have more money and we're working and it just works that way that we can travel. And when I think about the self-centeredness, I'm the kind of person that I'm like, okay, is this going to be a waste of my time? If what I'm going to do, is this going to be a waste of my time? Yeah. Evangelism is a sacrifice. Yep. We're not always going to look at evangelism as something that's beneficial to us. And it's hard if you're like me and I'm like, how do I benefit from this? Like, what's the value in this for me, right? But I found one. The value for you evangelizing and being a part of local church outreaches is that you become a well-rounded disciple. So how do we engage with this? Remember, our structure for this message is pray, give, go. We can pray for the lost. Pray that God would help us see them. That we wouldn't be like the Pharisee and the Levite in the story of the Good Samaritan, where the man is in the ditch, broken, hurting, half dead, naked, probably suicidal, probably depressed, probably going through a whole bunch of stuff. And they're like, I've got a God dream I got to go accomplish. So for so long, the church has had a message or an evangelistic gospel of come. You come to me. You come to my trunk or treat. You come to my parents' night out. You come to my whatever bash. You come to my this. When actually, according to Matthew and according to the Gospels, the Great Commission, we actually have a gospel of go.
Yeah, that's right. Come on now.
And that's that 1% difference when we start as a Christian. Are we going to walk this straight and narrow and stay on track? Are we going to let one thing cause us to be off track? Number 2 is you can give. You can give time by volunteering for different outreaches, and I'll share those with you in a minute. You can give your teenagers. If you're working, send your teenager. You can give money, and you can give encouragement. And this is how encouragement could look. Maybe you're not able to go. Maybe there's something that you like a work trip. Hey, I'm not going to be able to be there, but is there somebody in our small group that's going to go? Will you tell me how it's going? Will you send me pictures so that I can be praying while I'm on my trip? Right? Instead of like ghosting and being quiet and be like, I hope they're not mad at us, that like we're not a part of this. No. Jump into this space that now only you can fill because you know you're not going to be at the outreach. Be the encourager for and of the outreach.
Yeah, come on.
You can give money. Encouragement, I already said those. Okay, and then number 3. So here's the go for local outreach. So we have a couple outreaches already that we've been doing the last 2 years. They've slowly built over the last 2 years. The first one is we have a first responders basket that our children's ministries, they will do these pictures, they'll color them, and then we drop them off and pray for various church responders, first responders in February. And so that's just a basket that we fill. And we just make an announcement and ask everybody to bring fun stuff for that. In April or March, depending on where Easter is, we provide invitations for you to take out to your neighbors, to your kids' teachers, to if you want to go take up to the business people downtown or whoever. Last year, we handed out 700 of those. This room was packed. And it's so much fun to see those things disappear, honestly. All right, the next one is we have a single parent photography session. This is where when we have single parents, we know that photos are so expensive, and it's hard for single parents to get all their kids dressed up. Our kids are being loud. Oh my gosh, they're having so much fun with Evelyn. Hopefully she walks out of it and she was like, yes. Okay, we have a single parent photo session where we give them quality family photos because it is hard to be a parent and then to be a single parent. Gosh, it could be even more difficult. And so we want to just give them something that they can remember in all the busyness. There was a season. Then we have a post-Easter God of Science unit in elementary, and that just encourages visitors who joined us for Easter to come back the following weeks, and their kids love it. I love it. It's so much fun. Then we have the 4th of July outreach. And that's just in the morning. It doesn't take all day. We ain't doing that. But we are Christian before we are patriots. So we have the outreach in the morning. Join us. And that's super fun. We are in the parade, and then we have a tent. And so it's super fun. And then there's 2 outreaches that we're looking to add. And this would just depend on how much money is given towards this vision lane. The first one is a God of Science field day for the community. So it's us taking God of Science and making it public. And that just gives me a heart attack. But honestly, I think it's like in a good way. It just could be something that might just take off. And then we're looking and praying about kind of brainstorming. We have an idea for the fall, and we're just kind of waiting to see if we have enough money for that too. It would be a welcome home Sunday, kind of partner with back to school and see what happens there. Really for people who have stopped going to church or who have walked away from the Lord, and they just need encouragement to come back. No condemnation, no judgment, a safe place to come back to the Lord, right? So, and then the last way you can go is share the gospel on your social media. Okay, on Facebook, there's all kinds of Facebook groups where people are like, hey, I need friends for my kids, or I'm looking for a good church, or where do you find friends? Because I need friends as a mom or as an adult. It's so hard. Get in those groups for the purpose of watching for those messages and then start responding. You're welcome to visit me at my church. This is our youth nights. This is what we have for our kids, or whatever as it applies to you. But take the opportunity to reach out to the community. That's free, and that's on your own time. Nobody has to schedule that or anything. Now that we're done with that, okay. I want to share with you a quick story. When Trevin and I had moved here, we sold all of our stuff in Portland, and we saved that money to shop and buy all of our stuff here. And what that meant, which is now looking back and going through, is a terrible idea. I just don't do it that way. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be like Christmas. I get all brand new stuff and I get to go shopping. It was awful. It was so stressful. Like, don't do that. But here's what happened. We drove to Magnolia, right? I'm not from here, so we had to go to Magnolia and go shopping there. 2 hours away, we went to an outlet on the other side of DFW, and another spot on the other side of Dallas. We were driving really far away in all these different directions. And then we went to Nebraska Furniture Mart. And it's massive, you guys. And we were like, hey, if we don't come out in 4 hours, somebody call the cops, like, come find us. But every time we went somewhere, I got a text, or Trevin got a text, or we both got a text, each from a different person. And the text said this: I'm praying for you guys, and God gave me this verse for you. It was one of two verses. The first verse is Deuteronomy 11:24. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads shall be yours. From the wilderness in Lebanon, from the river Euphrates, even to the western sea shall be your territory. The other scripture was Joshua 1:3. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I promised Moses. Go ahead and put your stuff down. I want you to think about this, and you can stand.